Hi all, in this video we take a look at what separates the second generation Maschine Mk2 and the new Maschine Studio. At a glance you can clearly see the obvious difference is in the form factor and design. The Maschine Mk2 is now the mid-range model with a price tag of £500 and the Studio is the flagship model with a higher price tag of £850. Now hopefully this video will give you some kind of idea of the key differences between both devices. When it comes down to the size, you're looking at a good chunk missing from the Mk2, which is the added jog wheel section on the Studio. By the side, you can clearly make out just how big the Studio is, and also on top, the Studio has a good inch in height as well compared to the Maschine Mk2. Now the Maschine Mk2 is customizable where you can change the front faceplate to various colors including the large encoder and knobs. The buttons are clickable rather than squishy from the old generation. You have two inverted monochromatic displays, 256 by 64 pixel, which is very clearly highlighted, better equipped for when you're in those dark environment. You have RGB colored pads that is now customizable on the Maschine Mk2. Now the Studio is similar in design layout as the Mk2 but has that editing jog wheel section addition towards it. On top you have two extra large high resolution color LCD display 480 by 272 pixel. To your right you have a new one master volume knob. At the back on the Maschine Mk2 you have in the center your Kensington lock. You've got your USB input, which is nicely tucked in and secure. You have your MIDI outs and MIDI in. The back of the Studio, you have your Kensington lock in the middle. You got more MIDI output channel, 3 MIDI outs and 1 MIDI in, which can be a decision factor for majority of you. You also got the additional input of the foot switch as well, something that you don't find on the Mk2. You got the USB input, but I guess the downside here is you need a mains power for the Maschine Studio because of its true size, and there you've got your on and off button at the back. The Maschine Studio has built-in stands at the back of it, very large stands that's just tucked in place and easily pulled out as well, something that you won't find on the Maschine Mk2. Now, the Maschine Mk2, you will have to spend that additional amount to get a stand accessory that just easily slots in at the back of the Maschine Mk2, gives it a good risen height, making it a lot more comfortable in regards to viewing the Maschine Mk2 in front of you rather than going on top of it and looking down. Nice height towards it, but again, it's something where you have to spend that additional amount, whereas in the Maschine Studio, it already has that stand built into it where you just slide your hand at the back. It's quite fairly large, so you just have to just put your hand at the back, tuck it open, and the legs will just stick out. And it's got, again, very decent height towards it, bringing everything right in front of you. And here's a quick look at both the Mk2 and the Studio side to side on its respectable stands. On the Maschine Mk2, where you've got your selection button on the control section, normally you have 8 buttons that has various options. On the Studio, you have 10 buttons in overall. That's due to the arrange and the mix button that has its own added features. Now, in regards to the size of the LCDs, you could see just how small the Mk2 LCD is, and going backwards, just how big the LCD on the Maschine Studio is. On the Mk2, you have a note repeat with a secondary tap tempo button, enter button, left and right controls, tap tempo, swing, volume dedicated buttons, and then you've got a large encoder that has multifunctions towards it and pressing for enter. On the Studio, you have this performance section. It's got its own tap tempo dedicated button, sequencer mode, micro mode, and a note repeat. Now the remaining master section controls and functions are found in that jog wheel editing section on the Studio. You could tune, swing, adjust your volume, edit various controls by just using that jog wheel and dedicated buttons. Groups on the Mk2 and the Studio is pretty much exactly the same size, same functionality. Transport on the Studio has its own dedicated buttons. You've got the Metro button and Event button there. And on the Mk2, you have them as secondary button where you will need to use the Shift button in order to activate them. Now the pads section and all the functionality, again, it's exactly the same. On the Studio, it will have its own dedicated buttons for some of the functions. Like here on the Mk2, you have the events, the select button, and then you've got secondary event. This is something when the Maschine Studio, you will have your own dedicated button for. So if you look here on the Studio, it's got its own dedicated button for the events. The rest of the other keys, buttons are pretty much exactly the same, similar. Like I've highlighted, here the Metro button it has its own dedicated button rather than being a secondary function. There's the event button on its own. Your left and right, all functionality of the encoders that are crammed in onto the Mk2 is all controlled by just one jog wheel and various editing functions with its own dedicated buttons. I forgot to mention the jog wheel is also clickable on the Maschine Studio. The Mk2 pads has a bunch of secondary functions where you will have to hold down the Shift button and then select the respective pads in order to activate the various function. On the Studio, as you could see, there is no secondary function. Those have its own dedicated area, and that's where you look at the jog wheel again, editing section there. You got your own copy, paste, note button, nudge. But what's funny is you still have some secondary functions where you would still somehow need to press the Shift button. Now the Mk2 is a very light device. You could hold it with one hand, and you got the bonus of just being a USB powered without having that mains power. You could put it in your bag, so it's quite portable, not as portable as the Micro, but it's good enough. The Studio, now it's a bloody heavy, which is why I have to hold it with two hands. Huge, heavy. Again, the negative side of it, well, there's two. You've got on top of the screen, it's got this glossy finish, so expect loads of dust and thumbprints to show up. You're going to be dusting that away, and of course you have to mains power this baby, and USB as well, so you have to have a USB and mains as well. Pads, sensitivity wise, it's pretty much exactly the same from the Mk2 to the Maschine Studio. Sensitivity of pad feels exactly the same. Now, when it comes to generally using the Mk2 and looking at that screen, it's quite fairly easy, to find your way around. Yes, information on the screen is pretty crammed, but it is nicely highlighted. The encoder has its motor functionality where you can use it for various form of controls, searching, seeking. Shift buttons, you do have to use the shift button quite a few, but at least it's still at hand's reach. Sequencer is all there. I mean, all the control is nicely laid out for you to pretty much find your way around nice and easy. Keys, if you go into keyboard mode, as you could see, is nicely highlighted. The effects there, it's done reasonably well. It's crammed in, but not as much. And when you look on the Studio side of it, you get, due to those two large LCD screen, you get more of a visual representation of everything. Again, you got your dedicated note button, a very sensitive tap tempo button, and you could make various form of editing using that jog wheel or editing section by changing your tone, the pitch. And here you could see, if you press the arrange button, you could pretty much arrange and select various notes without having to look at your computer screen. So it really is a full-on experience. And looking at those two screens, like here, I could select the nudge button and use the jog wheel, and I could shift the notes to various different points, up and down. select various different instruments and note and do the same. You've got your scene mode here where you could view the scenes being playing and go further into that scene. You got your mix section, which is like a mixer view of the various sounds that you can control using the rotary knobs of each highlighted sounds. The browser section, I mean, visually it looks stunning, very high quality, where you've got logos of each particular instruments and sounds that you would select. And then on the right side, you've got the output representation of those instruments, where again, you could use the rotary knobs or you can use the jog wheel. The LCD screen are very, very vibrant. I mean, visually they look stunning, very, very high quality. You know, you don't realize till you actually see them or looking at them phrase prompt. All the information that you require is there highlighted, from the name of the instrument, it's highlighted, to going into keyboard mode and visually getting the color of the pads you've highlighted with the keynotes. You've got sampler view, and which you could go further on to add multiple effects to each particular keys and sounds. I mean, the studio itself is, I guess it's more integrated with Maschine Studio, the new Maschine software 2.0, compared to the Maschine Mk2. It's a great device, the Mk2, but everything feels pretty much crammed in. What they've done is pretty much what you would find from the Maschine Micro going up to a Maschine Mk2. The Micro was portable, but things were really crammed in regards to functionality. On the Maschine Mk2, it was more hands-on than the Micro. On the Studio, it's pretty much expanded from that. So, you know, overall, it's a great device. It's just down to your preferences and which one is better, I guess, suited for the software. Size and pads, as you could see, they're pretty much exactly the same. Design concept is the same. It's a machine hardware, so you'll find similar elements. But overall, to me, the Studio did it for me, even though you still have some shift functions that you do have to press the shift button down in order to activate. It's still, it's more integrated with the software compared to the Mk2. Using the Studio does have a huge significant difference. The way you approach your workflow, the visual feedback that you get without ever having to need a mouse or look at your computer screen, the physical control, all of these various aspects makes the Studio quite unique. And I didn't realize that using the Mk2 till I moved to the Maschine Studio. Overall, it really comes down to your preference. I mean, if you want something portable, USB powered only, you don't mind using those shift secondary controls, then yeah, go, and the price as well is a bonus. You're looking at 500 compared to almost £1,000. So yeah, then you could go for the Maschine Mk2 or even look further down to the Maschine Micro even. But if you're someone that really doesn't like the idea of being crammed down and you really want that visual experience back at you and to be focused on the hardware, then I would suggest you go for the Studio. And the software, as I've said, it is a lot more integrated into the Studio. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up and watch out for more upcoming reviews.